definitely not. No.
No. But I think that's definitely becoming more clear. In the last 3 years, it's become a lot more clear. But even just the last year, it's pretty crazy how some people are like 17 years old and they're already making exactly what they want to be making.
Yeah. Write those masterful albums at a really young age.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have done that. It has taken a long time. It's not until later 20s that I feel like we really found like the kind of music that is most true to us. And
like when you hear it back and you just think that's actually what
that sounds like us.
That sounds like us. Yeah.
But even so, I feel like it keeps changing. I would be surprised if it ever stopped changing completely. I feel like we are about to settle in to more like a specific genre or a sound, but I don't think that'll ever change. The wanting to change.
Yeah.
How does that factor into making a record then? Because if you're working on your album and what you want to sound like is constantly changing, how do you find something that's consistent? How do you know when to kind of put the barriers down and say, this is how this album's going to feel and this is going to be the sound of it? Because it does have a very consistent tone to it, the record.
Oh, nice. That's great to hear. I think usually when you're making an album, it is in quite a small period of time. So you very much are like chasing a certain vision for that time, which is perfect because, albums, I really think they should be completely cohesive, like made to listen through. But I think that where we're headed is that every album will be a little different.
But it's also, it's definitely also that thing that an album is a stamp of that time you're in. So I think it's nice that you take whatever time and then that is the album that you make at that time. And you might feel different in a year or a couple of years or even like a few months from then. But whatever you make at that time, you just gotta trust that that's the right thing. And because it's you've seen it with like tons of especially the bigger artists that can afford to make an album over several years. It doesn't necessarily enhance the album to work on it for 10 years. You rather want to make something that's true to where you are in that moment, then you should probably move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and some of those records that maybe people work on for 10 years, when they inevitably come out, they can feel a little bit scattershot and a little bit muddled, and there's not really a clear vision to them. They're kind of going in all these different directions purely as a subset of the fact that they have come from such a long period of time when the artist has, like you say, probably changed quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Completely. Yeah.
The most extreme example of that, I guess, must be something like Chinese Democracy by Guns N' Roses, which took them 10 years to make, and even more so. It took over 10 years to make, and then when it finally came out, people were like, oh, okay, this is from the most expensive album in the world, and it took them nearly 2 decades, and it sounds like someone born. But yeah, no, we definitely did not do that.
No.
We had
like 7 days.
It took us a couple of weeks, didn't it?
I guess, yeah. We're mostly working on post-production after that, though.
Yeah.
We basically recorded all of it, just all together in a tiny room.
Yeah.
And in a few goes. It was really, really natural.
Yeah, it was. It was.
What environment were you recording in?
We were in LA. We were with this producer, Gabe Wax. This really funny guy. And it was the first thing he had done since the pandemic had started. And so he'd spent a few months just kind of chilling and moving to LA.
Of us, yeah.
Yeah, like the rest of us, just chilling for a while. And then, we were the first people in this new space that he had made. So it was a real work in progress kind of situation.
Yeah, but he was super professional and has done tons of albums. So, you could tell it came very easy to him, which was super nice and comforting for us. But it was basically, I guess,
Garage.
a glorified garage,
Yeah.
like a plenty of space, and then tons of equipment, and then just a guy with a laptop and a couple monitors. But that's what
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you come upon him? What was the connection?
What was it?
Wasn't it the Crumb album?
Yeah. It was, he had just done an album by Crumb, and we just loved the sound of it. And then people actually compare us to them now, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I had a friend who was like, this song reminded me of you guys. And I was like, okay, yeah, well, that's because, it was the same guy who recorded it. So I guess he has a sound too.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was super nice to work with, really, really quick. And he left all the fun and easy part to us. And then he did all the hard part of like mixing and cutting it together. And yeah, it felt very easy to record.
Definitely, yeah. Now we were mostly just like hanging out in LA and eating nonstop.
Eating delivery while sitting and
we
working.
all looked horrible by the end of recording that album. Like a picture of us, we're all just.
Yeah, we definitely gained it.
We all gained weight. Yeah.
Talking of recording environments, I heard a story once about you recording in an igloo, maybe about 5 years back or so.
Whoa, yeah, that.
How did you find that?
Deep dive.
Oh man, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Good job.
Yeah, that was back when we were at college, and these people that we knew had. It was like that year that Boston just got so much snow. I think they called it snowpocalypse, and these people we knew built an igloo in their backyard, and then they just started having sessions in it, and it was not the most ideal situation to play an instrument. Like your fingers got so cold.
So the guitar must have gotten up tune all the time.
Yeah, it was, but it was fun.
Yeah, I bet the sound could be good because it must be like sort of like a dead sound in there. I don't know. I've never recorded an igloo. But it's a fun idea. Like, it's definitely something we have started experimenting a little bit more now. Like
Recording in igloos.
Recording in igloos and different spaces. We wrote most of What on Earth in Maddie's barn in San Diego, which definitely had because every room has its unique sound, and the barn had a really cool sound, and it was nice because we had stranded in California right when the pandemic hit. So we only had like a few mics enough, or just equipment enough to be able to record all the instruments, and and it had a really certain sound to it. Yeah. And there was tons of frogs.
Yeah, so many frogs. In the Call It Fate, Call It Karma single that we released, we recorded that in the barn, and you can just hear like hundreds of frogs in the background, which I really like.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
We even tried to get rid of the sound of the frogs as much as possible, but it was impossible. Before
we were going to record, Gustav would go outside and just try to get all the frogs to be quiet, because if you went out and you went shh, then they would get quiet for about 5 minutes.
Yeah. No frogs were heard.
Yeah.
No progress.
When you were saying that you recorded in the igloo in Boston, were you both at Berklee?
Yeah.
We were, yeah.
We touched upon it a little bit before we started recording, but it's interesting to me the way that the band has kind of moved around, and that you met at Berklee and then you were kind of in Brighton and London and then LA for a little bit and now Denmark. What do all these different locations kind of do for you as a band? How have they been important, and how have they inspired you creatively? Do they inspire you in different ways?
Definitely.
Yeah, super much. it helps creativity a great amount. That's not initially why we moved. It was for different reasons that we moved to the different places. But like even just when going on vacation, you get sparked with all these like different impressions, new people, new places, and the same thing happens, when you move more or less. You get into a new environment, and that just changes you and how you go about your day, and it helps you make new kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You're kind of like constantly reinventing yourself and then finding out who you are within the parameters of this new environment. And I think it's really healthy. And also just creatively, it kind of makes you hone in on what like you truly are as an artist.
Yeah, I feel like it could, if we ever get into like, God forbid, a writing block at some point,
God forbid.
I feel like you'll just have to, I guess we'll try moving again.
Yeah.
When was the last time you moved? When did you move to Denmark?
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
How come you decided to come to LA for the record then, to come back and record that?
We just mostly because of Gabe, the producer. That's where he was, and we'd considered several places, but not really Denmark. We didn't really know many musicians in Denmark.
No, it was. We didn't really know any producers. Not that Denmark doesn't have a ton of good producers, I think. But we just checked out producers. We were considering doing it on the East Coast, and maybe going back to London. But then we sort of fell in love with the Gabe sound, and thought, going to LA would be sweet. But it was also very much because that we got in contact with him, and it was sort of like, it was still a little bit of a critical time in the during the pandemic. So not everyone was working and recording stuff. So we talked with a lot of producers at the time, and all of them said, "Oh yeah, I haven't really done anything in a while, and my studio is not set up." And we were like, "Okay, well, do you want to set up a studio and record us?" Some would and some wouldn't, and that also played a factor in how we ended with Gabe.
And also, our drummer, he lives in LA.
Oh yeah.
That was a big help. And my parents are so close, so it was a free lodging. That helps too.
Definitely.
It's interesting that the pandemic weighs, like you're saying, onto the recording process and influenced the decisions that you took with that, because it's very much something that's there in the record too. And I know that you've spoken before about how it was a soothing response almost to the pandemic and a sort of emotional stress that inflicted on everyone. Did you begin consciously writing it with that intention in mind, or at what point did that reveal itself to you during the process that that's what you were doing with it?
I don't think we began writing it with that in mind, even though it just was kind of what we were doing. Because, we wrote pretty much all of this album as soon as the pandemic hit. Like, we landed in the US the day that all the borders were closed. When we got off the plane, we were like, "Oh, Trump just closed the borders."
Yeah.
I guess we're stuck here.
People were like calling me saying, "Gustav, you should hurry back. Things are about to really go down and get really ugly." And I just couldn't really see how, but I think
that's because we were out in the middle of nowhere, just at my parents' house, and we were just. It was like a pretty formative time for all of us. I think we just spent the entire day doing nothing but making music, and most of the night too.
Yeah.
And so it was just like this really unique thing where it felt like the world was ending, and we just had nothing to do but create something.
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic very much did write the album. Because we had all these plans. We are gonna go to South by Southwest and play that, and that was gonna be sort of like a dense schedule. But then suddenly, everything was off, and we didn't know what to do. So we just started jamming and recording everything we did, and shortly after, we had all the songs, and we thought, okay, well, we should probably make an album of this.
Yeah, but lyrically, I definitely decided to make it calming because everything just felt so stressful, and a lot of the songs were created just instrumentally first, and then I would kind of sit and try to put some melodies and lines over it. And I do remember during like that barn time, I was so tired of feeling scared and afraid of the future, and so I was just trying to make everything a little less scary and a little more comforting through the lyrics.
How did the pandemic and all the lockdowns and stuff that happened, how did they change your approach to life in general, like even outside of music, that whole experience for you?
I feel like it changed it in every way, almost. I mean, just the approach to making music now is so different. I think I said this before in another interview, and I'm not sure how it comes off. But, in Finding Nemo, when the turtle jumps into the like undercurrent and rides it, I feel like during the pandemic, I finally got that ability to like jump into the current of music that the band is playing, getting on that same wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that the way we the way we wrote music very much changed, because we used to very much come up with parts separately and then use them together. But when we were jamming in the barn, we would jam for many hours, sometimes like 5 to 6 hours, and doing it for so long, we got into this sort of like meditative state where we would finish a jam that has lasted for God knows how long, 15, 20, 30 minutes, and afterwards not really knowing what we had played, because we've been sort of almost gone, and listening back to that, we would be kind of surprised, like, oh, is that, because we almost feel like it didn't really sound like us, because everything was improvised. We never agreed on any chords or anything, and that gave and then after that, we were sort of able to tap into that a lot easier. So that's how we wrote the next songs. And also, but that's just musically.
Yeah, but also just in life, the pandemic has also made us like, you have to kind of choose to have joy in your life almost. I think before that, I was always really kind of hustling, which is also important, and we still do. But making sure to take moments and like protect yourself mentally from all the scary things in the world, and just make sure you're also giving yourself good thoughts and good things.
Yeah, in many ways, it was super liberating. Having everything canceled, everything that you thought you were supposed to do for like pretty much a year was suddenly canceled. So you
have to be okay with it.
Yeah, so you had all this time to sort of like work on what you want, and still like find a new way of doing things, find a new way to work, and that was I think super good for creativity. And you can also see in the way that by the time we did we finished the album and we're ready to release. We definitely weren't the only ones. There were other musicians out there, not surprisingly, who also had like a creative, been riding a creative wave and recorded an album like Taylor Swift even like recorded, isn't it her third pandemic album? Who knows? Tons of albums. So that has been it's been really nice for also as a music fan to hear all this, like all your favorite artists coming out with albums, because they haven't been busy touring and all that stuff. I guess it also makes it a little harder to stand out in the in the midst of all these great artists out there. But it's definitely a good thing overall.
You open the album with the lines, "I don't need to play a part. I forget I can be exactly who I want." Was that a revelation that came for you at the beginning of the pandemic with what we've just been talking about, or at what point did that sort of arrive for you, that idea and that thought?
Yeah, that was something written in the barn, and it was a really monumental revelation. Which, I mean, it seems like the easiest thing ever, but it is so easy to forget that it's like completely your own choice to be exactly who you want all the time. But I think I was definitely guilty of kind of trying to play the part that I thought I needed to be. And I still do that. I think everyone does. But I love singing that song. It's such a nice reminder.
It's almost like we sort of construct these parts. A lot of it's in our own head, isn't it? We construct these parts for ourselves and we kind of project it onto other people, and that's what they expect of us, when really it's all kind of just going on up there.
Exactly. Yeah. We all think that someone else needs us to be something when they don't really.
No.
Is that almost enhanced in some respects by being in a band too? Like when literally, when you go on stage, there is an element of playing a part and kind of playing a heightened version of yourself to a certain extent.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, to be able to go up and be this vulnerable but still very present and connected performer. And that's also something that's pretty new to us. I mean, we had our first like real tour in October last year. That was the first time we played like shows night after night after night. And it is a different thing than just going out and playing like one show that you've been prepping for months. And I think it's something that you need to learn how to like perform and still be yourself. And I think that just takes time.
Yeah. And it is very much, as you say, it is like you play a part that you wrote at a certain point in your life, or a song that is about a certain feeling that you had at time in life. So you kind of box yourself in that little time period, and sometimes that feeling lasts, and sometimes I guess it won't, which is fine. Like, sometimes when you go to see some of your favorite bands, you're like, oh, they didn't play whatever song you wanted to. But because I can't imagine that, you could feel estranged to some of your own music.
That first song that we started that tangent off with, I know that it was also inspired by Trainspotting's Carpet Scene.
Oh yeah, that's true. I love that scene. I dream of trying to recreate it in a music video. But
which scene?
Falling. Oh, when he's tripping and then the carpet gets pulled out and then all the walls move back.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I would really love to redo that without the like creepy crawling baby on the ceiling, of course.
Yeah. Everyone loves like a good one shot of good scenery. Yeah, that's a really cool movie, and that movie is very visually inspiring.
Yeah,
for sure.
It is so great. Yeah, every time we watch that, I always think we're going to make a really cool music video. We're going to do it completely by ourselves. And then when you actually go over the reality of like creating those moments, I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, that also looks.
It's almost like it took a big production team.
Yeah, I wonder if it was expensive. Yeah, but then then we did up making some sort of version of it in Falling on a very different level and a very different vibe. I think that the biggest premise of the Falling video was just we're gonna have just instead of like of a long one shot, we're gonna have the whole thing being a one shot. So there's no cuts and throughout the whole video, which was a nice little challenge to do. But yeah, I feel like it accentuates the feeling of falling, and it sort of like pulls you in to the music video a little bit, as well as just being a weird little mind-bending effect.
Yeah.
I love the fact too that you begin the album with falling, and this idea of falling down, but then you end it with cloud watching and the idea of looking up, and they're very much the antithesis of each other, and kind of it feels cyclical in that way too. For you, what did you see the connection between those two songs being, and what did you see the roles that they play and how they compare in the record as a whole?
I think like Falling, it is kind of like pulling you into the album. Like, I think ideally, whoever is listening to the album would just, lay back with some nice lighting or the stars, and just like be mentally pulled into stamp in time of what we've created. And then but by the end of the album, if someone was to just listen all the way through, they would feel maybe uplifted or ready to kind of take on the day or whatever situation.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like Falling has a little bit of a more like hypnotic vibe to it as well. So it's sort of like lays the mood for listening to the album, where maybe crowd watching is at the end of the meditation, where they're saying like feel your feet and start moving your fingers because you're on your way out.
Yeah, that's true. Bringing you back into your body at the end.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to look at it.
Do you remember, I love that idea that you were mentioning at the start of that, of someone sitting down and kind of just falling into the album, whether it be underneath nice lighting or the stars. Do you remember the first time that you heard the album from start to finish, once it had been fully mixed and mastered?
I don't remember.
I'm sure we did do that though.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably, we have this really awesome starlight that I always, it's like a projector that puts stars everywhere. And I bring it to every recording session we ever do because it's a real mood maker. And
sure.
We probably put that on, use some really good speakers, and kind of, just fell into it like we hope people do.
Yeah, but it's hard when you're in the process of making it, because it's like it's your work, so you listen to it every stage of the way, and often fragmented. So maybe we heard the song like 50, 100 times before the songs were like mixed and mastered. I do remember times of where then you gotta sort of distance yourself for like a week or something, and then try to listen to it again, trying to prepare yourself, trying to listen to it unprepared, and listen to it in different moods, because it's not always something different you get out of it, but it's often something different you get out of it when you listen to it. But it's hard sometimes listening to your own music, because you're so biased. And at that point, by the time it's done, you've listened to it over 100 times. So it gets a different vibe to you, and I guess it could be nice and like more meaning, or like have a different meaning, but I'm sure it will mean something different to pretty much everyone else who listens to it.
Where did you surprise yourself on this album most? When you look back at what you've created and you think back on the process, where did you surprise each other most?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think Vacationer was the biggest surprise. Was sort of like a slower, more like keys-based ballad. Still very much keys-based, but yeah, it was like fairly slow and a little somber, I suppose. But yeah, working with Gabe, he was like, I think it's very obvious that the reference songs will be more like I remember he using like a Daft Punk song as a reference. Okay, I never thought that in a million years, and making it more upbeat was definitely a nice choice and something that we have been embracing a little more, taking things that were more somber, like, hey, what if we sort of make that upbeat? And so I think making Vacationer into a different mood than what it was. It's still somber, I suppose, but
It is.
that was sort of like an eye-opener, surprising to me at least. How about you?
I don't know. I feel like I was just so prepared for so much of it that not a lot of it has surprised me, because we just had so much time to plan it all out.
It's funny that you bring up Vacation, because that's one of my favorite lines in the album, where you say vacation is all I need so that I can go back home again. Where do you feel most at home in the world at the moment?
Maybe Denmark?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really tough, or maybe Brighton, UK. That was, even though that's not our home anymore, it felt like artistically like the right place for us.
I do miss Brighton too.
Yeah.
And going back there and playing there in October after not having lived there for 3 years was strange, because when we were there, I kind of just wanted to go back to our house.
Yeah.
Where we haven't lived for years. But yeah, it still very much felt like home. But, as cliche as it sounds, home is where the heart is. So I feel like we're good at
creating new homes.
Yeah, and I feel like we have multiple homes.
Yeah.
Denmark is definitely one of them, also because I'm from there. I got friends and family, and but going to the US also feels like home. So yeah. So we got more homes.